The next item of business is members' business debate on motion 18679 in the name of Claire Adamson on pancreatic cancer awareness, and this debate will be concluded without any questions being put. Would those members who wish to speak in the debate please press the request to speak buttons. I now call on Claire Adamson to open the debate for around 7 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. And can I first of all thank all of my colleagues who have supported the motion to allow the debate to come to the Chamber this evening. This is the third year that we've had a debate in the Chamber to mark Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month. And there are a number of activities that will be happening over the month. Lots of fundraisers, lots of information. Last Thursday we had a photo call on the Garden Lobby steps. It was attended by many of the colleagues, including as well as the First Minister and the Cabinet Secretary for Health. And on the 21st of November, we have International Pancreatic Cancer Day, and since I've got a purple #fail, unlike the gallery members who are here to support us this evening, I promise on the 21st I will definitely be wearing my purple in support of pancreatic cancer. On 21st of November, the Pancreatic Cancer Scotland's PanCan van will be outside the Parliament, giving my colleagues an opportunity to go to meet with the members of PCS Scotland and see the awareness-raising activity that they take around the country in Scotland. And that's a van that's sponsored by Arnold Clark, and we're very thankful that they're able to undertake that activity across Scotland, and I'm sure many members will be out to visit and to see some of the activities that are carried out to raise awareness. Since last year's debate, Presiding Officer, I've had an opportunity to visit with Pancreatic Cancer UK and with Kim Rown, who's in the gallery this evening, the Future Leaders Academy staff at the Beatson in Glasgow, and to see some of the world-leading activity that is going on in scientific research in pancreatic cancer in Scotland, and something I'm sure the Minister will want to talk about, and recognise that Scotland is leading in a lot of the research that is being done, and that it's so important that we support that. And I'm sure many members would welcome the opportunity to visit that project in the Beatson in Glasgow. The reason this is so important is because pancreatic cancer remains one of the least survivable cancers. We know that cancer survival rates have barely changed in the last 50 years, which makes it a very quick and often devastating diagnosis for someone who is faced with that conclusion to investigations. It's a very difficult cancer to pin down. Very often people have been treated for minor, less serious complaints because it's associated with changes in the bowel movement, changes in appetite, weight loss, and indeed my own colleague Nikki, who's not here today, whose mum passed away from pancreatic cancer. It was eventually a referral to a diabetic clinician that identified that indeed she had something wrong with her pancreas, but it wasn't to do with diabetes. It was actually a very late stage diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. And this is why we have so many people so passionate about changing that outcome. And that's what we need to do to raise awareness of the symptoms of this cancer, so that people seek support from clinicians earlier, but also so that there's an understanding that, you know, there is hope there for the future, and that we can do something to change this round. Pancreatic cancer survivors are few and far between. The 10% club, or the 1% club rather, are people who have survived pancreatic cancer for more than 10 years. And it's only 1% of those who have received a diagnosis. And so there's so much that we can do to raise awareness, to encourage people to come forward, and to look at what we can do as individuals, and indeed what the government can do to help in this area. And can I put on record my thanks to Jean Freeman, the Cabinet Secretary. In the gallery this evening we have Linda Murray representing the Begley family. Her father died from pancreatic cancer. And Linda has been tenacious in looking at her father's pathway and how, if things had maybe happened differently, her father could have been a candidate for surgery, which is one of the few treatments for pancreatic cancer that we have. And Linda has worked tenaciously to get the attention of the Cabinet Secretary, and we were delighted when Ms Freeman came to the cross-party group in cancer and agreed to, if I can just call them Linda's asks about what we should do going forward, and that there is now an audit of pancreatic pathways undergoing in Scotland, and that Ms Freeman and Linda are working with the clinicians, and we've got a follow-up meeting of that later this month, very timely follow-up of that work that's been done. So there'll be much happening. There'll be lots of buildings being lit up purple. We can ask that on Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Day in the month that we all try and wear purple in recognition of what's happening. There are very many activities going on, including my colleague Nikki, who I mentioned earlier. I'll be attending a Prosecco and cake evening at her house to raise money for pancreatic cancer. I see Miss McKelvey looking very interested in that. I'm sure we can extend an invitation. But there's so many things. Lots of football clubs are wearing purple for this, and people are going out and supporting pancreatic cancer in many of the usual fundraising events. Tunnocks have gifted PCS a limited edition of their famous tea cakes wrapped in purple foil to celebrate this November's Pancreatic Awareness Month. And one of the patrons of Pancreatic Cancer Scotland, who will be well known to many, certainly of the ladies in the chamber today, Orkney designer Sheila Fleet, has created a limited edition enamel necklace, which is being sold in support of pancreatic cancer this November, and I hope my husband's watching the debate. This is such an important remembrance for those who have passed away, and as I said, it's very difficult. When you have a survivable cancer, I think families get behind fundraising, and we've seen how that kind of transformed the outcomes for people, and when you look at something like breast cancer and see how much has changed. But this is usually such a short, sharp shock for people that it's almost, you know, it's happened to a family before it goes. And I just want to finish by saying last year, we had a very moving tribute from my colleague John Scott in the chamber, who was talking about his wife who had died at the age of 49 from pancreatic cancer, and he gave a very warm tribute to his wife in that debate, and our thoughts are with John today. And just to say that, you know, we can make a difference. A 5-year survival rate is only 5.6%, and these are the statistics that we have to, hopefully, in the years to come, be reversing and talking about successes in making inroads into tackling pancreatic cancer. Thank you very much, President.
We move on to the open debate, and it's speeches of 4 minutes, please. Miles Briggs, followed by Willie Coffey.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. And can I start by congratulating Claire Adamson for securing today's debates, and really to commend her for her consistent campaigning on pancreatic cancer. It's really important and something which I know she's passionate about and has been campaigning for many years. And also to thank her for her comments with regards to my colleague John Scott. And I'd like to also start by thanking and paying tribute to Pancreatic Cancer UK, Pancreatic Cancer Scotland, and also to Macmillan Cancer Support for their useful and comprehensive briefings they've provided members ahead of today's debate. As Claire Adamson has already outlined, there are some very stark statistics around pancreatic cancer which we as a country need to turn around. It's the deadliest common cancer in Scotland, with a 5-year survival rate of just 5.6%, compared to now 69% for more survivable cancers. Less than a fifth of people are diagnosed at an early stage, and less than 10% of people with pancreatic cancer actually go on to receive surgery, which is the only curative treatment that can actually help save lives. Despite only being the 12th most common cancer here in Scotland, pancreatic cancer is responsible for the 6th highest number of cancer deaths. I very much agree with what Claire Adamson has said today with regards to the charities working in this area and the work which is going on to increase public awareness of the symptoms of pancreatic cancer, and that must be a top priority, I think, for all of us. The National Cancer Strategy and Campaign to raise awareness as part of a broader national plan for pancreatic cancer is rightly a key ask of Pancreatic Cancer UK, and this could be replicated for the most successful elements of the Detect Cancer Early programme, which has had some real successes in Scotland around breast cancer, lung cancer and colorectal cancers. All these campaigns have and can make a real difference. And while this is a very difficult cancer to detect early, anything that can actually increase early detection rates and diagnosis must be welcome. With the causes of pancreatic cancer being still little understood as well, it's vital that we work to take forward more research into this cancer. And it's very encouraging, I think, that so much world-leading research is here today being taken place in Scotland. I think we should celebrate that, not least through the Precision Panc programme based in Glasgow and the Future Leaders project, which was outlined. Like Claire Adamson, I've had the opportunity to visit the Beatson and to visit the Academy last year and meet with some of these inspirational young leaders who are really now striving to make these discoveries that can transform the diagnosis and treatment of pancreatic cancer now and in the future. But currently, pancreatic cancer only receives 2% of national cancer research funding, and this clearly has to change. Now, I agree with Pancreatic Cancer UK and the Scottish Government in terms of how we must take forward the development of specific initiatives to incentivise now targeted research into pancreatic cancer across our research and clinical communities, and that work is clearly already being taken forward. I know on World Cancer Research Day, Glasgow University sent all members their newsletter specifically highlighting the need to get the treatment for pancreatic cancer to patients at the right time, and the window for opportunity to achieve that actually often being very short. So I also today want to back calls by Macmillan Cancer Support for the crucial necessity of growing and developing our cancer workforce in this area so we can meet that ambition of providing tailored support to all cancer patients by 2023. Before closing, Deputy Presiding Officer, I want to pay tribute to all those volunteers, many of which who have joined us this evening, for the work that they do for pancreatic cancer charities across the country, not only in terms of raising awareness, but raising vital funds. My constituent, Kim Rowan, who lost her grandmother to pancreatic cancer, continues to make a massive contribution to her campaigning efforts and involvement in our Parliament's cross-party group on cancer. And I also want to give a special mention to Kim's 13-year-old nephew, Jack Morris, who's taking part in Cancer Research UK's challenge of running 24 miles in 24 days in honour of his relatives who have died, sadly, of pancreatic cancer. And I hope he raises lots of money in this challenge and wish him every success in actually helping take forward support for this worthy cause. Again, I welcome today's debate and recognise the widespread cross-party support that exists to take forward a transformation in pancreatic cancer diagnosis and treatment in Scotland. There is clearly a need for us to see real progress, and I hope the Scottish Government and Parliament can make sure we continue to work to put in place the right plans to move things forward so that more Scots can survive from pancreatic cancer. Thank you.
Willie Coffey, followed by David Stewart.
Thanks, Presiding Officer, and thanks to Claire Adamson for securing this debate for the third consecutive year during Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month, and for her continued efforts to highlight the need for earlier diagnosis and treatment for pancreatic cancer. I also thank Cancer Research UK, Pancreatic Cancer UK and Pancreatic Cancer Scotland for the work that they do and for their continued efforts to raise awareness. I'm keen to contribute to the debate, Presiding Officer, and have raised the issue in Parliament as far back as 2012. Pancreatic cancer has impacted on my own family, with my mother succumbing to the disease as far back as 1985. And our family's lived experience has made us acutely aware of the need to keep researching to fight this disease. I'm hopeful that by speaking in today's debate, I can help raise the profile of pancreatic cancer, particularly drawing attention to its symptoms, in the hope that early awareness of the symptoms will lead to earlier diagnosis. Pancreatic Cancer UK's briefing for this debate said that 2/3 of people in the UK can't name a symptom of pancreatic cancer, And because early diagnosis is crucial, that really needs to change. Some of the symptoms, and please remember it's not a certainty by any means, are worth stating. And they are, the first noticeable symptoms can be pain in the back or stomach area, which might come and go at first, and which is often worse when one lies down or when one has eaten. Unexpected and unexplained weight loss, indigestion and changes to bowel habits that Claire Adamson mentioned, loss of appetite, and jaundice. The most obvious sign of jaundice is the yellowing of the skin and the whites of the eyes, but it also turns urine dark yellow or orange. Feeling of being sick and being sick, difficulty in swallowing, recently diagnosed diabetes, since pancreatic cancer destroys the cells that produce insulin. Now, please remember, Presiding Officer, that this is by no means certain that a person has the disease with any of this, but being aware of these symptoms should help earlier identification and hopefully earlier and successful treatment if it is. I do support a dedicated awareness campaign in pancreatic cancer, as the briefings reinforce that the mortality of this particular cancer is exacerbated because of the late detection. I support the continuing research into developing screening and early detection tests. It is vital that this work receive the support and funds that it needs. And I'm encouraged that Scotland is leading the way in the UK in research into pancreatic cancer via both the Precision Panc programme and the Future Leaders Academy at the Beatson. I know that we all hope that the research in Scotland and around the world will lead to a method to diagnose pancreatic cancer earlier. If members were in the chamber earlier for the debate on the power of modern and new computers to help us in the field of medicines research, then applying technology and research into fighting pancreatic cancer is surely a worthy cause and a worthy priority. So thank you to Claire Adamson once again for bringing this to the attention of the Parliament, and I look forward to hearing the rest of the contributions and to also pass on my best wishes to John Scott, for whom I have the highest regard. Thank you.
David Stewart, followed by Alison Johnson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And could I also start by congratulating Claire Adamson on securing this evening's important debate and for the quality of her opening contribution. No cancer is a better cancer, but pancreatic cancer is one of the least survivable. And as other members have made clear, early detection is absolutely vital for any chance of improving a person's chance of survival. That's why it's so important that we should this debate and World Pancreatic Cancer Day next week to raise awareness so that people are better informed. With little improvement in survival rates over the last 50 years, Pancreatic Cancer Scotland have, and I quote, set out a vision for the 2020s to be the decade of change, and I support them strongly in this plan. And while death rates are declining for many other cancers, death rates are increasing for pancreatic cancer, with around 800 new diagnoses for pancreatic cancer every single year in Scotland. The outlook isn't good, so it's absolutely vital that we work together on this. Of course, Presiding Officer, behind every number, every statistic and every survival rate, there are stories, as we've heard from Willie Coffey and others, of mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, aunts and uncles, grandparents and friends. And as we've heard, the pancreas is found behind the stomach and in front of the spine. It produces digestive enzymes that help the body use and store energy and also regulates blood sugar levels. So the common symptoms of cancer of the pancreas are poorly understood and are often mistaken and diagnosed as less serious health concerns. So awareness of the symptoms can therefore help with early diagnosis, as people are more likely to make an appointment with their GP and get a correct diagnosis. If a patient is diagnosed early enough to surgery, their chances of a 5-year survival increases from 7% to almost 30%. So knowing the symptoms and risk factors can save lives. So I also want to thank Pancreatic Cancer Scotland for their excellent briefing. And from it, I learned of the Can, the community of people across the country who are aware or even affected by pancreatic cancer and are all dedicated to the cause of raising awareness and raising funds. And I know some of them are in the gallery today, and I also welcome them. Members of the Can have managed to organise for landmarks across the country to be lit for November. This will hopefully not only raise awareness of the disease, but also give people a focal point to remember a loved one lost to pancreatic cancer or celebrate the life of his survivor. And I want to thank all the people involved in this lighting up, including of Nessbridge and my own city of Inverness. So going forward for treatment, there's some excellent research into this at the moment, including one team at Glasgow University. And this has mostly been funded by Cancer Research UK, who have classed pancreatic cancer as an unmet need. And the research has potential to be transformational in the way patients are treated. The charity Pancreatic Cancer Scotland was formed by a group of patients, carers, nurses and doctors across Scotland, and I quote, to share hope, knowledge and action in the battle against pancreatic cancer. And their collaborative approach, including the wider NHS, third sector groups and the Scottish Government, has been in the core of their working together ever since. So I want to congratulate them on their tireless work to raise awareness, to raise funds, to raise hope against the disease. And can I finish by congratulating again Claire Addison for her initiative in securing this evening's debate again. Thank you.
And the last of the open debate contributions is from Alison Johnson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I welcome this debate and I'm grateful to Claire Addison for bringing it to Parliament. She is a champion for all affected by this disease. I'd also like to extend my sincere thanks to my constituents who've shared their personal experiences of pancreatic cancer with me, and to those organisations who provided us with briefings for this evening's debate. As we've heard from colleagues, pancreatic cancer has the lowest survival rate of any cancer. It spreads rapidly, it's difficult to diagnose, and it's hard to treat. Symptoms are vague and they often don't form a coherent picture of one identifiable illness or condition. We know that around half of pancreatic cancer patients visit their GPs with their symptoms 3 times before being referred to hospital, while 16% visit their GP 7 times or more before receiving the correct diagnosis. And unlike other cancers, as we've heard, there's been little improvement in survival rates. Pancreatic Cancer UK is clear that a screening programme or early detection test must be developed if this is to improve. Now, research into this is being conducted, but until a test is available, knowing the symptoms and risks is vital for early diagnosis and for a better chance of survival. Because research shows that patients diagnosed in time for surgery are more likely to live 5 years and beyond. A survey undertaken by Pancreatic Cancer Action in July 2019 found that 73% of Scottish residents, as we've heard, can't name one symptom of pancreatic cancer. So we must arm people with this knowledge so that they don't dismiss apparently random symptoms. There's been no national public campaign for pancreatic cancer symptoms, although through the Detect Cancer Early programme there have been public campaigns for breast, lung and colorectal cancers. This must be rectified, and I'd be interested if the Minister, in responding, could could the Scottish Government develop a national campaign for raising public awareness of pancreatic cancer with a focus on prevention and early detection? And any information campaign must also take into account the impact of health inequality on detection and survival rates. While diagnosis remains dependent on patients returning to their local surgery time and time again, it will inevitably be some of the most vulnerable people in society who suffer. Last month, it was revealed that the most deprived areas have cancer incidence rates that are 32% higher than the least deprived areas, and that mortality rates are 74% higher in the most deprived compared with the least deprived areas. It's often the most vulnerable people who are least likely to visit their GP surgery in the first place when they start showing symptoms. And thus must be reflected in any awareness-raising activity. How can we reach those people that most need to go and make that initial appointment? So awareness of the risks is crucial, but it's equally important that we do celebrate the great work that is taking place. One of my constituents, whose life has been impacted by pancreatic cancer, has set up a Facebook group called Team Scotland for Pancreatic Cancer and is organising the first support group for everyone who's been affected. Pancreatic Cancer Scotland has also formed Pan-Can Clan as a means of developing a community committed to raising awareness and funding, awareness of and funding for pancreatic cancer, where people can share their stories and feel supported. I think it's so important that people realise that they're not on their own, that there are others who are experiencing the same difficult journey, that there is support out there, that there are people to talk to. So these efforts to support those with pancreatic cancer and their loved ones at what is undisputably a frightening and confusing time are laudable, and we should take every effort we can, make every effort we can to highlight and promote them. In closing, I'd like to share my constituents' words with members. She told me that I lost 2 members of my family to pancreatic cancer. My great-uncle in his 70s, then over 20 years later, my nana was given the same diagnosis, and nothing had changed over those years. She cited the lack of follow-up care which her nana and great-uncle received, as they'd been given, in her words, a death sentence. The statistics may be disheartening, but we should take care to avoid adopting a fatalistic attitude. Awareness raising must focus on early detection of symptoms to give people the very best chance at survival. We don't want to frighten people, we want to encourage them to seek help. My constituent has campaigned for a pancreatic cancer diagnosis to be treated as a medical emergency, not a death sentence. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
I now invite Graham Day to respond to the debate for around 7 minutes. Please, Minister.
Presiding Officer, let me begin, as Miles Briggs and Willie Coffey did, by thanking Claire Adamson for not only for bringing this debate to the Chamber, but for being the campaigning voice for pancreatic cancer that she has been. I also want to take the opportunity to thank all staff and volunteers that work tirelessly across NHS Scotland and the pancreatic cancer charity sector. They work tirelessly to not only raise awareness and funds, of course, but also to provide support to those who need it most. A good recent example of that is Pancreatic Cancer Scotland launching the PanCan Clan, I'm glad I managed to get that out, which aims to bring together people to support the vision of making the 2020s the decade of change for pancreatic cancer. The unending commitment of them and others is invaluable in responding to this disease. A cancer diagnosis is never easy, least so when the diagnosis is as pernicious as pancreatic cancer so often is. The survival rates of pancreatic cancer, as we've heard, are very low due to it being very difficult to detect it in its early stages. Of the 800 people diagnosed in Scotland every year, 1 in 4 passes away within a month, which is a very sobering statistic. It often has very few, or indeed no, detectable symptoms. That's why we must keep up all research to find ways to detect it far earlier and improve survival chances. As challenging as that is, the Scottish Government is not shying away from the challenge. Our £41 million Detect Cancer Early programme aims to increase the proportion of Scots diagnosed in the earliest stage by 25%. In September of 2018, the programme launched a new social marketing campaign, Survivors, to reduce fear of cancer and remind people of the importance of acting early. The campaign was on air again in September of this year, and we hope this will encourage people to see their GPs earlier, as previous campaigns have been so successful in doing. And pick up on one of Alison Johnson's points. Working with third sector partners, we're also helping raise awareness of new referral guidelines, which include updated guidance for pancreatic cancer, making sure that GPs have the best advice on how to refer patients in this situation. This activity reflects some of the key aims of the West Survivable Cancer Task Force, which seeks to double the survival rate of the 6 least survivable cancers, which of course includes pancreatic. Government officials are, I understand, due to meet with this task force on the 18th of this month to discuss how the Scottish Government may collaborate further with them going forward. So this is very much work in progress and a priority. In the programme for government, we committed to supporting boards with education sessions for staff to improve monitoring of patients with a suspicion of cancer and to make sure that cases are escalated effectively when required. We're also supporting work to help GPs get direct access to key tests for their patients. The Scottish Government is determined to make sure our pancreatic cancer services are the best they can be, and understanding patients and their families' first-hand experience in this is vital. So earlier this year, as we've heard, the Health Secretary met with Linda Murray, Pancreatic Cancer UK, Pancreatic Cancer Scotland and Claire Adamson to explore what we can do better. Linda Murray, as Claire Adamson highlighted in the gallery tonight, became a champion for reform of pancreatic cancer services in Scotland following her father's unfortunate and untimely passing. William Begley lost his battle with pancreatic cancer just 14 weeks after being diagnosed, and Linda's response has been to become a driving force for change of our national services. I know the Cabinet Secretary is looking forward to meeting Linda and colleagues again next week. Those clinical colleagues supported by the Scottish Government have, as Claire Adamson highlighted, been conducting an audit of pancreatic services, and I understand several good suggestions for service improvements have emerged, which will be explored at that meeting. As I mentioned, pancreatic cancer is very difficult to diagnose in that early stage, and so we have to do more to prevent a disease where possible. One of the ways to do this is to arrest our rates of obesity. In Scotland, 2/3 of adults are overweight or obese, and this is now one of our biggest public health challenges. The health implications of this, coupled with the economic consequences, make it a top priority for the Scottish Government. And I'm sure my colleagues in the Chamber are familiar with the Diet and Healthy Weight Delivery Plan, which sets out a vision for everyone in Scotland to eat well. One of the key ambitions of this plan is to halve childhood obesity by 2030 and significantly reduce diet-related health inequalities. The plan has over 60 broad-ranging actions to help make it easier for people to make healthier choices. And since publication, some good progress has been made on a number of fronts. But there's more to come. Most notably, the introduction of a bill to restrict the promotion of targeted foods high in fat, sugar or salt with little or no nutritional value. And the aim is to do that by the end of the current parliamentary session. As I mentioned, research is a vital weapon in the fight against pancreatic cancer. One of the most exciting projects underway is Precision Panc. That project initially was seed funded by the Scottish Government, and it sees clinical and biological information from patients enrolled on the master protocol to be identified, extracted, anonymised, and presented in a time frame that's relevant for use in clinical trials, meaning more patients can access the best available treatments. Scotland has ambitious targets for precision oncology. Thanks to Precision Panc, I'm pleased to say that Glasgow's Precision Oncology Laboratory is now recognised internationally as a centre of excellence in DNA sequences. So we're excited by the progress we're making, but we need to stay grounded. Alongside pancreatic cancer, there are a number of other cancers where very little progress has been made in terms of improving prevention, detection and survivability. And like pancreatic cancer, cannot get left behind. Indeed, around 50% of all cancer deaths can be attributed to those 6 cancer types. And like many in this chamber, I've seen friends die as a result of some of these. Improving outcomes for these 6 cancers is no small feat, but I think we're all committed to working as partners to tackle this. Presiding Officer, we all stand here today united in this cause, and we want to see more people surviving pancreatic cancer diagnosis. And while I've just highlighted some of the steps that the Government has taken to address these public health concerns, I would be amiss if I was to pretend that there isn't still a very long way to go. But by engaging more with the third sector and continuing to take advice from those affected by the disease, we are moving away from the one-size-fits-all approach to cancer to something more bespoke that aims to put the patient at the heart of the decisions made. Presiding Officer, can I finish by echoing the good wishes of others to our friend and colleague, John Scott. I was speaking to John just yesterday, and I can advise the Chamber that he was in typically mischievous form and anxious to be updated on events here. And like everyone else in this Parliament, I very much look forward to welcoming John back here next year. Presiding Officer.
That concludes the debate, and this meeting is closed.